Welcome to EO Talks, Eastern Oregon's very own talk show, only here on EOAlive.
I'm Patrick Starnes. I live in Brownsville with my wife. We restore old houses, and I've been on school boards for over 10 years, so that's what got me into wanting to run for governor, because I saw the effects of the work in Salem on little school districts and big school districts across the state, and that activated me to come up with some solutions for our schools and other issues that we'll talk about. Yeah, I've been a cabinet maker for over 30 years. I've also worked protecting old growth, and when I lived in Roseburg, it was with Umpqua watersheds. So I have a really strong conservation background and also understanding of forest issues. And I've worked, like recently, my wife and I have restored old houses from the 1800s, and we have taken them from abandoned homes to beautiful homes that we've sold and restored. I went to school in Douglas County, Winston-Dillard School District. I learned my furniture making trade in Michigan, where my mother's from, and I moved back in 1987, and I've been back in Oregon ever since. I went to Umpqua Community College, and then I graduated from the University of Oregon with a history degree, which has helped me with the historic preservation work. Yeah, it's a small community. It reminds me of an old TV show that I watched growing up, Mayberry RFD. It's about 1,600. It's an incorporated city. It's within Lynn County, and Albany to the north of us is our county seat. I've been told it's one of the most conservative red counties in the Willamette Valley. And I grew up also in a red county down in Douglas County. So I'm used to people having differences, and I still believe that we have way much more in common than we do uncommon. Well, there are a lot of issues that we're going to talk about, but what my wife and I have realized is that campaign finance reform, that's why it was a primary issue in 2018, affects so many issues. It affects healthcare costs, it affects the forestry issues, and it affects climate change issues. So if we don't get big money out of politics first, it's hard to have solutions to these other problems that we're dealing with. Wildfires and homelessness. I mean, there's everything that we need to deal with in Oregon. Well, there was an independent, there's one independent in the 30s. He was a Meyer, and he was elected during the Depression. And he was, those are difficult times like we have now. They used to call them Hoovervilles. Now we just have homeless villages. And so he was a good one-time independent governor candidate and elected governor. And I have a variety, Tom McCall, Hatfield. We have such a great, Barbara Roberts. We have such a great amount of historic figures in Oregon. Well, my religious values are private, and my spiritualism is private. I don't plan to campaign with my spiritual or religious beliefs, but I believe that we have to get big money out of politics, because otherwise we don't really get honest solutions. We're going to get the constant big interests, special interests influencing our solutions, if they are solutions. So I would just say honest hard work is the backbone of me and Oregon. Well, I know that Democrats are a little leery. They probably would say, well, you're not a real Democrat. But I have to remind them that I was the secretary of the Douglas County Democrats back when Kitzhaber was in Roseburg. And I left the Democratic Party when Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton passed NAFTA. And I felt that really hurt not only the environment, but especially hurt a lot of American workers by shipping those jobs to Mexico. And so I'm back as a Democrat because I'm encouraged by a lot of the things that President Biden's doing and did immediately in his first 24 hours, which was to sign the stop order for the XL pipeline. So if we're going to deal with climate change and our carbon footprint, then we don't need to continue these old ways of doing business. And I think another criticism could be folks say, well, you've never been elected to office in Salem. But I would counter and say that my 10 years of experience on school boards, which are boots on the ground kind of experience, is more powerful than a short-term county commissioner or a lifetime politician like some of my opponents, you know, and some of the others that may get into the race who've never even served on a school board budget committee. So I feel like that school board experience should actually be required for those people in Salem. And I know there are a lot of state senators and House reps. Even Shamia Fagan, the Secretary of State, has served on school boards. And some of those state senators and House members still do serve on school boards. So I think that connection, since schools are the biggest portion of our budget in Salem and our biggest job, that's a crucial experience that should be required in Salem.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. You know, there's a lot of stuff that happens at these local governments that really needs to be covered. So I appreciate that.
Yeah,
that's a really good experience.
And they volunteer, so it's not, you know, it's a thankless job. You know, it's city councils and these budget committees. I served on the Roseburg Parks Commission. I've served on the Roseburg Budget Committee. I was elected more than once to the Douglas Soil and Water Conservation District down in Roseburg. So I've got decades of experience, public service, and I think that's important for our young people to have those kind of role models and to get involved in their communities and give back. I mean, I've gained so much from Oregon, and it's important that we all give back to our communities.
Alrighty, next up, we'll do the lightning round. First off,
Okay.
ducks or beavers?
Well, I'm a U of O grad, so that's like a no-brainer, you know. And it was, my wife's a Buckeye, so it was, you know, it was, yeah, it's tough, but somebody has to win, right?
Yeah.
It might as well be the, because she's moved to the coast too.
What is your favorite Oregon landmark?
Oh, there's so many. Just the other day, I took some friends from back east to Crater Lake. Wow. And, you know, I went there in the past, but to go again, you know, and to go often, I think is important. What a symbol for Oregon's beauty and majesty. I mean, it's just so bigger than life and so unreal. It was, and the deep blue waters, just like you think those photos are photoshopped, but it's real and it's big. And it's got interesting history, you know, because it was like Mount Mazama at 12,000 feet. And then it blew while the Native Americans were here. So that's pretty interesting folk tales from the Klamath Indians, I'm sure.
Yeah, there is no place like Crater Lake.
Yeah, I do. I want to put Paulina lakes, those just east of Bend and Prineville, on my list. I mean, there's a whole list of things. There's some great hot springs in Eastern Oregon. It's called Snively. It's on the Oahe River. And there are other hot springs across the state that are just, we're so blessed. And that's what was cool when I had the friends here visiting, is that we not only have the recognizable rainforest and old growth in Oregon, but then we have the coast, and then we have the high desert. And then where I live is the flat, you know, it's like Indiana kind of flat, Willamette Valley, where all the farming is. So it's such a diverse state, and so beautiful. And I'm so proud to be an Oregonian.
Same. What is your favorite Oregon beer?
I'm a non-alcoholic beer drinker. And when we came, it used to just be like German beers, like Beck's and stuff. But when we came back from Crater Lake, we went through Bend and stopped at Deschutes Brewery, and they have a new one, and it's called Irish Draft. It's my first dark beer that's non-alcoholic, so that was quite a tasty treat.
Nice. Alrighty, last up, do you have a favorite place in Eastern Oregon?
Oh, I have many. I'm not saying this correctly. The Wallowa era, you know, Enterprise, Joseph. Those mountains are just like Yellowstone. I don't know if you've been to Yellowstone, and I've never been to the Alps, but I imagine those snow-capped ridges are probably comparable to the Alps, you know. So many favorite places across the state, but I was like, wow, my wife, both and I were impressed. Well, I just want to make an important distinction between my other Democratic opponents, and that is when you see the big money come into this campaign, you got to remember who was fighting for campaign finance reform in the last governor's race was moi, and now we're going to be bringing that up again, because it's so important that your $25 or your $50, whatever you can afford, is important, that's more important than the millions of dollars from special interest groups or single donors. You know, in the last race we had Phil Knight donated $3 million, and that's why I endorsed Governor Brown, because I felt like she was taking small donations from union members, which is a lot different than from wealthy people, you know, one individual. And we've got to change. We did change the Constitution, which allowed Oregon to finally have limits, because we were one of 5 states that have no limits, and we now can set those limits. And unfortunately, the leadership in Salem this last session in 2021 failed to do that, and it's suspicious why they did. What an opportunity, because we passed that measure in November of 2020 with 78%. So it was a bipartisan support. The lowest was in Lake County with 60%. So even the lowest was well over the 50% required. They can call me directly. I have my cell phone. I answer my own phone. It's 541-671-7829, or text me. They can also email me directly. It's patrickstarnes@live.com. And our webpage is starnes2022.com. So we look forward to hearing from folks. And we're especially going to need that grassroots support from folks from all over the state. And like we did in 2018, we were the only candidate that went to all 36 counties. And we're planning to do that again. We're not afraid to get out of the Willamette Valley and meet Democrats and others across the state.